Some Rothschild of Frankfurt. 30 years later, when Europe had become quiet and safe again, the Duke came back from overseas, and the Jew returned the loan, with interest added. Note number 2. Here is another piece of picturesque history. It reminds us that shabbiness and dishonesty are not the monopoly of any race or creed, but are merely human. Congress has passed a bill to pay $379.56 to Moses Pendergrass of Libertyville, Missouri. The story of the reason of this liberality is pathetically interesting, and shows the sort of pickle that an honest man may get into who undertakes to do an honest job of work for Uncle Sam. In 1886 Moses Pendergrass put in a bid for the contract to carry the mail on the route from Knob Lick to Libertyville and Kaufman, 30 miles a day, from July 1, 1887, for 1 year. He got the postmaster at Knob Lick to write the letter for him, and while Moses intended that his bid should be $400, his scribe carelessly made it $4. Moses got the contract, and did not find out about the mistake until the end of the first quarter, when he got his first pay. When he found at what rate he was working, he was sorely cast down, and opened communication with the Post Office Department. The department informed him that he must either carry out his contract or throw it up, and that if he threw it up his bondsman would have to pay the government $1,459.85 damages. So Moses carried out his contract, walked 30 miles every weekday for a year, and carried the mail, and received for his labor $4, or, to be accurate, $6.84. For, the route being extended after his bid was accepted, his pay was proportionately increased. Now, after 10 years, a bill was finally passed to pay to Moses the difference between what he earned in that unlucky year and what he received. The Sun, which tells the above story, says that bills were introduced in 3 or 4 Congresses for Moses's relief, and that committees repeatedly investigated his claim. It took 6 Congresses, containing in their persons the compressed virtues of 70 million of people, and cautiously and carefully giving expression to those virtues in the fear of God and the next election, 11 years to find out some way to cheat a fellow Christian out of about $13 on his honestly executed contract, and out of nearly $300 due him on its enlarged terms. And they succeeded. During the same time they paid out $1 billion in pensions, a third of it unearned and undeserved. This indicates a splendid all-round competency in theft, for it starts with farthings and works its industries all the way up to shiploads. It may be possible that the Jews can beat this, but the man that bets on it is taking chances. End of note 2. The Jew has his other side. He has some discreditable ways, though he has not a monopoly of them, because he cannot get entirely rid of vexatious Christian competition. We have seen that he seldom transgresses the laws against crimes of violence. Indeed, his dealings with courts are almost restricted to matters connected with commerce. He has a reputation for various small forms of cheating, and for practicing oppressive usury, and for burning himself out to get the insurance, and for arranging cunning contracts which leave him an exit but lock the other man in, and for smart evasions which find him safe and comfortable just within the strict letter of the law, when court and jury know very well that he has violated the spirit of it. He is a frequent and faithful and capable officer in the civil service, but he is charged with an unpatriotic disinclination to stand by the flag as a soldier, like the Christian Quaker. Now, if you offset these discreditable features by the creditable ones summarized in a preceding paragraph beginning with the words, "These facts are all on the credit side," and strike a balance, what must the verdict be? This, I think: that, the merits and demerits being fairly weighed and measured on both sides, the Christian can claim no superiority over the Jew in the matter of good citizenship. Yet, in all countries from the dawn of history, the Jew has been persistently and implacably hated, and with frequency persecuted. Point number 2: can fanaticism alone account for this? Years ago I used to think that it was responsible for nearly all of it, but latterly I have come to think that this was an error. Indeed, it is now my conviction that it is responsible for hardly any of it. In this connection I call to mind Genesis chapter 48. We have all thoughtfully, or unthoughtfully, read the pathetic story of the years of plenty and the years of famine in Egypt, and how Joseph, with that opportunity, made a corner in broken hearts, and the crusts of the poor, and human liberty. A corner whereby he took a nation's money all away, to the last penny; took a nation's livestock all away, to the last hoof; took a nation's land away, to the last acre; then took the nation itself, buying it for bread, man by man, woman by woman, child by child, till all were slaves. A corner which took everything, left nothing. A corner so stupendous that, by comparison with it, the most gigantic corners in subsequent history are but baby things, for it dealt in hundreds of millions of bushels, and its profits were reckonable by hundreds of millions of dollars, and it was a disaster so crushing that its effects have not wholly disappeared from Egypt today, more than 3,000 years after the event. Is it presumably that the eye of Egypt was upon Joseph the foreign Jew all this time? I think it likely. Was it friendly? We must doubt it. Was Joseph establishing a character for his race which could survive long in Egypt? And in time would his name come to be familiarly used to express that character, like Shylock's? It is hardly to be doubted. Let us remember that this was centuries before the crucifixion. I wish to come down 1,800 years later and refer to a remark made by one of the Latin historians. I read it in a translation many years ago, and it comes back to me now with force. It was alluding to a time when people were still living who could have seen the Saviour in the flesh. Christianity was so new that the people of Rome had hardly heard of it, and had but confused notions of what it was. The substance of the remark was this: some Christians were persecuted in Rome through error, they being mistaken for Jews. The meaning seems plain. These pagans had nothing against Christians, but they were quite ready to persecute Jews. For some reason or other they hated a Jew before they even knew what a Christian was. May I not assume, then, that the persecution of Jews is a thing which antedates Christianity and was not born of Christianity? I think so. What was the origin of the feeling? When I was a boy, in the back settlements of the Mississippi Valley, where a gracious and beautiful Sunday school simplicity and practicality prevailed, the Yankee, citizen of the New England States, was hated with a splendid energy. But religion had nothing to do with it. In a trade, the Yankee was held to be about 5 times the match of the Westerner. His shrewdness, his insight, his judgment, his knowledge, his enterprise, and his formidable cleverness in applying these forces were frankly confessed, and most competently cursed. In the Cotton States, after the war, the simple and ignorant negroes made the crops for the white planter on shares. The Jew came down in force, set up shop on the plantation, supplied all the negro's wants on credit, and at the end of the season was proprietor of the negro's share of the present crop and of part of his share of the next one. Before long the whites detested the Jew, and it is doubtful if the negro loved him. The Jew is being legislated out of Russia. The reason is not concealed. The movement was instituted because the Christian peasant and villager stood no chance against his commercial abilities. He was always ready to lend money on a crop, and sell vodka and other necessities of life on credit while the crop was growing. When settlement day came he owned the crop, and next year or year after he owned the farm, like Joseph. In the dull and ignorant English of John's time everybody got into debt to the Jew. He gathered all lucrative enterprises into his hands. He was the king of commerce. He was ready to be helpful in all profitable ways. He even financed crusades for the rescue of the sepulchre. To wipe out his account with the nation and restore business to its natural and incompetent channels, he had to be banished the realm. For the like reasons Spain had to banish him 400 years ago, and Austria about a couple of centuries later. In all the ages Christian Europe has been obliged to curtail his activities. If he entered upon a mechanical trade, the Christian had to retire from it. If he set up as a doctor, he was the best one, and he took the business. If he exploited agriculture, the other farmers had to get at something else. Since there was no way to successfully compete with him in any vocation, the law had to step in